This is a session on a new resource that we've been developing over the last few years called Messy Church Goes Wild, and more recently Messy Adventures, which are sessions for messy churches to get outside in nature. This is a picture of me going wild. It was taken in the middle of the Italian mountains in the Marche. I don't know, I'm probably at about 3,000 meters. Walked up from the valley bottom over a pass down into another high valley in the mountains for a couple of days, and with my backpack on. It was a good walk. It's about 18 kilometers there and back. So why did we think about we should go outside with Messy Church? I think partially there was a growing concern, and Jane Ledbetter led this. We use a lot of plastic in Messy Church. Have you ever noticed that? You know, plastic bottles and stuff and litter. Yeah, and I think Jane brought to Messy Church this increasing concern over plastic pollution. And so she kind of led a charge in trying to recycle and start to think about other ways of doing Messy Church. And then COVID came along. And I know we're all trying to forget about it. I don't know if that's true over here, but it's certainly true over in the UK. You have far more notices in your church building about COVID now and gel on tables than we do. We really have none of that anymore in the UK because the message is let's try and live life as normally as possible. But COVID came along and we had to be creative in lots of ways in church. And one of the ways that some messy churches were creative was going outside. When we were able to. For a long time, we weren't able to do that. The only thing we could do was go for a walk on our own for an hour a day. That's all we were let out. But we started gathering in outside spaces and discovering God in the environment. I was on sabbatical during one of our COVID lockdowns. I delayed my sabbatical from May 2020 because I thought the church, it wouldn't seem right to abandon the church in the middle of the period when they weren't meeting. So I went on sabbatical at the start of 2021, and I did a Sunday service at the first Sunday in January, went on sabbatical on the Monday. On Tuesday, we got locked down again. And so it was stay-batical. It was 3 months at home. And one of the things I did is in the mornings I do a daily office, which is fairly unusual for a Baptist. But we have a daily office linked to a community called the Northumbria Community, which is a Celtic spiritual community, actually founded by a Baptist, Roy Searle. And they have a daily office, and I've been doing the daily office for over 20 years now. And the first lines are, one thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. And through that stay-batical, I used to put a camp chair by our patio doors looking into the garden. And when the weather got warmer, I went and sat on the patio. And I said this prayer day in, day out throughout those 3 months. And I came away with a real sense that I was looking out into the natural world. And the words took on a new meaning, you know, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. I really had a sense that I was looking into the temple of God. And I used to do a lot of walking in the woods, and I found I was encountering God, and God was speaking to me through creation. So I think it came out of that. I think there's a recognition that people have this real connection with nature in some way. So these are the kind of title screens from loads of David Attenborough's nature documentaries over the last 20 years. I don't know if you get them over here. Yeah. Audience figures go up when these things are on Sunday night. People are entranced by the beauty of creation, by the wonder of creation. I think it's another thing we're tapping into, this wider sense of there's something special, even if spiritual almost, about creation, if people don't have a focused view of that. And then I think we're responding to younger generations. So where I lived in Croxley Green, the schools have eco teams. So the schools have small groups of pupils whose responsibility is to think about how to green the school, to make it more environmentally friendly, led by a teacher. And one of the teachers in one of the schools decided to network these groups together in my village. And so this organisation called Green Croxley formed. And because we had a good relationship with the schools, those of us who had an interest in the environment in our churches decided we weren't going to reinvent the wheel and have a Christian version of Green Croxley. We just got involved. So we used to get involved in the activities, and this is from one of the activities on Earth Day 2021, after the lockdowns, when on a Wednesday afternoon, helped by the local council, we had 300 people, adults and children, just walking around the village picking up litter. And there's a real sense of engagement with the environment and issues around the environment with our children and our young people, including the ones that you will have in your families in Messy Church. So I think there are some of the reasons why this movement to go outside to experience creation is now part of Messy Church in the UK. And what interested me, when we had that 20th anniversary Zoom meeting to celebrate Messy Church, when we broke out into our little groups to chat about Messy Church, how many of them had already started going outside? Some of them 100% of the time, in all kinds of weathers. And believe me, we have all kinds of weathers. But as somebody in Orkney told me, on that day when we were in the cathedral for that service, and we would go out to go to a tour of stone circles in the afternoon, it was going to pour down with rain, as this lady in Orkney Cathedral said to me in Carolyn, there's no such thing as the wrong weather, just the right clothes. At the beginning of the Bible, you have this phrase occurring time and time again in the creation stories. God saw that it was good. Now, actually, people get this wrong. Often people say, the Bible says God said it was good. God saw that it was good. It was a real visual, it's a real visual statement. And I've got interested in how we use the visual to encounter God. And maybe actually by just going around and looking at creation, observing creation, that's part of this, encountering God's wow over creation. By the way, this is a picture called Earthrise. It was taken on Christmas Eve 1968 by the first Americans to reach the moon. And they took this photograph in quite a hurry, but when they brought it back to the Earth, it was the first time we got a glimpse of the beauty of the Earth from afar and its fragility as well. Now, one of the ways you can navigate your way around the Earth is something called What 3 Words. You know What 3 Words? Some of you? Yeah. Okay, I'll explain to you what 3 words is. Somebody very imaginative divided the entire globe of the Earth into 3-meter squares. And to every 3-meter squares, randomly allocated 3 words. And if you know what those 3 words are, and you go to the What 3 Words app, you put those 3 words in, and it will take you to that place. So sometimes when people give contact details these days, they'll give you the What 3 Words, and you can use those to navigate, and then it links into Google Maps and it takes you there. So I didn't use this to navigate myself to Christ Church of the Saviour this time, because somebody brought me here, and we use Google Maps. But I looked up what the 3 words are for Church of the Saviour, and this is what they are: backlogs, outlined, and street lamp. I have absolutely no idea how relevant they are to this church. I don't think we've got time to go through a creative exercise to find out. Sometimes I find they really are connected to places. The ones for my college in Oxford, when I looked them up, were rational, learning, and something else. And I thought, well, they're not bad for an Oxford college. Now, I want you to play a game. No? Oh, is that, yay, good. I want you to imagine we're making what 3 words for the entire universe? And we have to make a what 3 words address for the Earth. So I want you to look at that picture of the Earth hanging over the moon. And just look at it. And by looking at it and thinking about it and imagining over it, what are your 3 words that you're going to give to the Earth for an address? Okay, off you go. You can talk about it on your tables, and share ideas, and see if you can come up with the what 3 words for each table. So we can point aliens in the right direction for the Earth. You okay? Oh, do you want the cup as well? Sorry to ruin your church furniture. It's got these ones. Oh, cool. Creativity. Okay, so have you come up with 3 words? Not yet? I'll give you 1 minute more then. 1 minute more. I do this exercise with children in schools and they're brilliant at it. Let's see if you can beat them. Better them? I doubt it. Okay, I'm going to give 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so while they're still working out it on this first table, does anybody else want to tell us what the 3 words are? What have you got? Anything over here? Oh, beauty, fragile, and dynamic. Why dynamic? Great, lovely. Beauty, fragile, dynamic. What were your 3 words? Okay, beauty, life, peace, or power. Great. That's wonderful. That's great. 3 words? Fragile, blue, and life. Blue, yeah. There are hints of brown and green if you look too closely. But that's great. Any? God's magnificent creation. That's good. That's a great phrase. God's magnificent creation. Come on then. You were working so hard on this. What have you got?
Marbled ephemera ice.
Ephemera. You'll have to explain. I've never heard of that word, ephemera.
Something fleeting.
Fleeting.
Fleeting and precious and
Okay. And why ice? Ice.
See the moon? It looks icy.
Ah. Well, yeah. Well, that's a good comment because there is ice on the moon. Polar ice in South Pole especially. Yeah, hidden away. Okay. Actually, I love the way that there's a real difference between the Earth and the moon here. You know, you've got some great words here about the Earth. You know, wonderful, beautiful, life, dynamic, moon. Well, grey, desolate. Actually, one of the astronauts called it magnificent desolation. Buzz Aldrin, the second person on the moon.
With the Vegemite in between.
With the what? I know what Vegemite is. I'm just wondering what do you mean? What, the blackness you mean? I suppose that's one way of describing it. Vegemite, yeah, or Marmite. Actually, Marmite and Vegemite are not the same, because when I came to Australia in 2010, I had to bring several large jars of Marmites for our friends who claimed it wasn't the same as Vegemite. It is beautiful, it's fragile, it's wondrous, it's dynamic, but we don't always think that. This is a chart called Climate Stripes, and you may have seen this already. Greg's got a scarf. Have you got your scarf, Greg? Oh, come and model a scarf for me, Greg. Is this, it doesn't matter where, this is for your neck of the woods, isn't it? Over in Western Australia. Yeah. So, Greg is now modeling this beautiful scarf. He is beautiful, wondrous, dynamic, just like the Earth, and he's warming up. So each kind of stripe is a year, at least on that one, and it's color coded from 1850 to this was 2023.
Oh, you want me to go that way?
No, this is the wrong way. So it's relative to kind of the average temperature in 1850 and 1900. So throughout the 1800s, blue is cold. So it was colder than average. And as you get into the late 20th century, you start to see the reds appearing, which is warmer than average. And it just gets warmer and warmer and warmer as you go through to 2023. I think bar 1 year, the hottest 10 years have all been in the last decade. Climate stripes. There's lots of different versions of it. You can plot it for your own town. You can plot it for a continent or a globe. This is for the globe. It's just a quick way of getting an idea of how the world's changing, how the world is warming, and it's warming because we use fossil fuels, and fossil fuels put this gas carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And carbon dioxide, there isn't much of it in the atmosphere. You know, we talk about small things matter today. There is less than, we measure the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in parts per million. So imagine you had 1 million balls in a ball pit. Before about 1800, 280 of those balls would have been carbon dioxide. Now, about 420 are carbon dioxide, 420 in 1 million. And yet it has the ability, just that small amount of gas, to warm the planet by an extra kind of almost 1.5 degrees. Small things matter. And 1.5 degrees does not seem very much. You wouldn't really notice if tomorrow was 1.5 degrees warmer or colder than today, probably. We're not that sensitive. But we have begun to notice. So here are a couple of the headline things that I pulled off a group called the Weather Attribution Network, which looks at whether extreme weather events are linked to climate change. So there's been a long-term drought over East Africa these last few years. That seems to be linked to climate change, the warming of the planet. Last year we had these massive forest fires over Canada, worst forest fire they'd ever had, wider, earlier. Listening to the news the other day, they've already started and they're evacuating towns in the same parts of Canada again because it's been very dry and the soil's dried out. In the Mediterranean last year and the year before, we had an amazing heat wave. Where I go in Italy, where you saw me walking, I was there for 2 weeks last year. It was 35 degrees for 2 weeks. And we were 500 meters up a mountain. It was hot. And I wonder, in your side of the planet, in New Zealand, what have you noticed change? Have you noticed it changing? What have you noticed? No frost. Yep. 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 Yeah. No. So milder winters. Yep. Okay. Anything else? Lots of intense. Yeah, extreme rainfall. Yeah. Yeah. Glaciers retreating. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Yes. There's something strange going on with the oceans at the moment. I mean, you're in the Pacific Basin where you get this El Nino La Nina oscillation, and over the northern hemisphere winter, you've had a La Nina over the East Pacific, which is now fading, which means usually you get more rain over the East Pacific, and then Western Australia is dry, and so is Eastern Australia is dry, and so is Greg's place in Western Australia. They've definitely seen it much drier. They didn't have any rain between September and a few weeks ago in Western Australia. But globally, every ocean basin is warmer than it should be by half a degree to a degree. Scientists aren't really sure what's going on. Why is it suddenly got so warm very quickly? We don't know. So these are a few things I picked up from this World Weather Attribution Network. Glacier retreating. This is the Franz Josef Glacier, which my daughter went to visit a few weeks ago. So on the left, you've got 2007. On the right, you've got 2020. Where's the glacier? It is there. It's further up the valley out of sight. It's just retreated a long way in less than 20 years. And then you're getting these extreme rainfall events, and in other places you're getting drought. And one of the books I've been reading coming over here and before I came over is this one here. I'm not going to pronounce the Maori. Can we do that for me? Sorry? Yeah, I think it calls translation roughly is embrace within, embrace without. And these are just interviews with 30 women in New Zealand who are involved in creation care. There are some copies of it over on the bookshelf. It's a lot cheaper in England than it is here. I got it for £1.99, which is about $4 here. And I know, but it's a really interesting read, and but really interesting as well to hear what people are doing about creation care. I used to make weather forecasting and climate models, and use the climate models to give an estimate of what's going to happen into the future if carbon dioxide keeps increasing. And so if we carry on the way we have been doing over the last 150 years, by the end of the century, the world will be 5 degrees warmer. If you've noticed 1.5 degrees, you'll notice 5. So in England, we had a really hot day in 2022. It hit 40 degrees. 40 degrees C. I mean, we got up early and drew the curtains, shut the windows, so we didn't let the hot air in. About 1 o'clock, I went over to the local shop, the co-op, to buy some milk, but also to experience what 40 degrees was like. There was no milk to buy. All the fridges and freezers are broke. Couldn't cope with the heat. That is one day. That's extreme. That really is extreme. But 35 degrees is becoming more common. And at the moment, that happens every few years. 5 degrees at the end of the century warming, that would be every day in July for us, 35 degrees. The safe limit is 1.5. If we really stop producing CO2 and we shift to renewable energies quickly by 2050, we might be able to keep it to 1.5 degrees. To be honest, that's gone. There's no hope of that now. The likely temperature increase by the end of the century is 2.5 to 3 degrees. That's adding up with the commitments the governments have made, if we're lucky, we'll keep it to 2. If we rapidly decarbonise our industry and our transport and our power generation all over the world. But it's likely 2.5, which will be livable, but it will have consequences for extreme weather events and things like that. Some of the children who come to your messy churches will still be alive in 2100. So if they're 10 now, they'll be 85. It's not an unusual age these days. They will see this. They will experience this. And the levels of anxiety amongst children and young people are growing around the world. And these are some of this was a research paper that was done by some health professionals and published in The Lancet, which is one of the big global health journals. And these are some of the words that they reported children around the world using when they think about climate change. Sad, afraid, angry, powerless, helpless, guilty, ashamed, despair, hurt, grief, depressed, betrayal, and fear. They're already an anxious generation. And then this is what they come out with. I ask this question with schools, and sometimes some of them come out with determined as well, because they're determined to do something about it, which is great. So how do you keep hope alive? How do you keep hope alive? And I think as Christians, we can keep hope alive if we listen and embrace our calling, our first calling to mission, which I think we've forgotten about. So I ask sometimes church in the UK, what's the primary call to mission? And they say, Matthew 28, go into all the world, make disciples, teaching them everything I've commanded you. As Baptists, that's really core to our missional understanding of spirituality. But I think there's a more ancient call to mission, actually, which is for this age. Sorry? To care for the earth. So, God plants this garden in Eden, and there are all kinds of trees, some pleasing to the eye and good for food. That's an interesting phrase, pleasing to the eye, isn't it? They're not just there for us to benefit from. There's a bigger benefit of just by looking at the wonder of the natural world. This, by the way, is a picture I took on the tour up the west coast of Scotland on my 40th wedding anniversary. It's called Inverewe Gardens. 100 years ago, it was barren moorland, and then the landowner planted trees from all over the world, and there are also sheltered vegetable gardens in walls to keep the sunlight in, to make it warmer. They are some of the biggest turnips I've ever seen. And onions, they were amazing vegetables. But this is just a shot I took through one of the trees. In Australia, they tell me this is a gum tree, so that was a good one to use. Beautiful place, and it reminded me of these stories, and then God took Adam and put him to work in the garden and take care of it. Actually, maybe he put the man in the garden to work it, not the woman. My wife's the gardener, not me. I'll cut the grass, but I don't really like gardening. So, but then so that was our first call to mission, and then it says in the next chapter, when it's all gone horribly wrong in the story, God's walking through the garden in the cool of the day. I love that phrase. God's enjoying creation in the cool of the day. And he calls out to Adam and Eve, where are you? And they were hiding. And maybe we're hiding. God still values creation out there, but maybe we're hiding. Maybe we've forgotten to value it as much as we should have done. So I think some of the aims of Messy Church Goes Wild and Messy Adventures is just kind of reconnect with that first call to mission, to meet God outside among creation, as some of you have already talked about that already, to grow in appreciation of love for God's gift to the natural world, and to return to our first call to help care for the earth. And, I think celebration, creativity, hospitality, kind of connecting it, those values of Messy Church, because there's so much in the Bible, actually, where we're connected to creation. Those stories in Genesis, trees that are good for food and beautiful to look at. That speaks about God's creativity and the diversity of creation, God's playfulness in creation. And then hospitality. Jesus, as Greg said, he taught loads using imagery from creation. Creation as a sign of God's care. See how the lilies of the fields grow. Will not God clothe you more? And then my favourite bit is, I love the last part of Job. Job, a very distressed person, rightly so, lots of questions, whinges on, a whinging Hebrew, not a whinging Pom. I've just come up with that, sorry. And what amazes me about Job, God never answers his questions. Have you noticed that? He never answers, he never gives him an answer. All he does is take him on the earliest nature documentary ever. And he says, look at the world around you, the animals, the plants, the sky, the sea. Look at it. And at the end of it, Job says, my ears have heard of you, and we hear a lot about God in church. Is that right? But then he says, but now my eyes have seen you. And it's this visual connection in nature with God that I think we've lost over the last 200-300 years. And I think we're trying to reconnect and connect with that. So Messy Adventures, we have these 12 sessions around all these different themes of wilderness and plants and birds and people and water and trees and mini beasts and movement and stillness and rocks and weather and animals and change. And we're inviting people within those themes, within that experience of creation, to discover something more about God. And actually to connect with Jesus. So I wonder if you can connect any of those themes with something Jesus might have said. Any of the stories he said or the teachings he said. Any thoughts on that? How do those reflect and connect with Jesus? Any ideas? Trees? Zacchaeus climbed the tree? Yep. Yep. Trees, yeah, Psalms, trees praise God, yeah. Rocks speak out? Yeah. I once did a sermon on Palm Sunday on the Rocks Cry Out. I talked to them about volcanoes and what we could learn spiritually about volcanoes. I'm not sure what the ministers thought of the sermon, but I tell you what, the scientists and the science teachers in the congregation loved it. But, yeah, Jesus was in the wilderness. In Mark's gospel, it said Jesus was in the wilderness and the wild animals were with him, which I think we see as a negative, dangerous thing, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's a statement of that beauty of creation. And, yeah. No. Yeah. But you could talk about, he talked about birds. He talked about water flowing. He, yeah, talked about the sky a lot. And talked about planting a seed and it becoming the biggest of trees. The smallest seed becomes the biggest trees and the birds go on its branches. So he talked about creation and nature an awful lot. And we've missed that. We've turned those experiences that he was drawing on, because he was drawing on people's experience of the world and the natural world. We've taken his take on that, connecting with people's experience, and we've turned them into teaching points about God, rather than moments where people's imagination might have been stretched in their exploration of God. And so linked in with each of these themes, we asked some scientists to write their own kind of reflections on these issues. And by the way, all these resources for Messy Church and Messy Adventures are all there on the website, Messy Church website. They can all be downloaded as PDFs. In fact, I've discovered they're rather more colourful than the book. They've got more pictures in than the book. And also, we've got these scientists, all different experiences, biologists and conservationists and bird experts. We got them to record little short 5-minute videos to explain why they are excited about their subject, which might inspire you to go and do a bit of work out in creation with families. I was going to show you a little video clip. Yeah, let's do that if we can. Another project I've been involved with is I run the Baptist Union Environment Network, which is it's separate from Messy Church, but we're trying to engage our Baptist community in climate change and environmental issues. And over the last year, I've been making some films, half-an-hour films, which connect the themes of wonder and playfulness and communion, which I actually think tie in with Messy Church values, and exploring the science and faith perspectives on that. And so I thought I would show you part of one of the films about sky. There are 4 films on coasts and sky and trees and life, and that's the website they're all on. I'll show you a bit on sky, because I think there's a message in there that's quite important, because this can all seem very, very overwhelming. But small things matter, and that's how we hang on to hope. So thanks. I was once on a small boat sailing down the Amazon River. I tell you, it was a lot warmer than it was today. On the muddy bank, we could see the butterflies resting, red and green, vibrant blue, bright yellow. And as I looked at them, it reminded me of a saying that describes the playfulness of the sky. If a butterfly flaps its wings on the banks of the Amazon, you might get a tornado 5 days later in Texas. Now that sounds crazy, preposterous. An unmeasurable puff of wind turning into a 100-kilometre-an-hour gale that destroys everything in its path. But that's how the weather works. Small changes in the wind can build into huge storms. Now, meteorologists have learned that we can get a handle on this playfulness by running lots and lots of different weather forecasts, setting each one off with a slightly different combination of temperature and moisture and wind. Now, sometimes the predictions are similar. The play of the air is controlled, it's organized. Other times the playfulness is wild and the forecasts vary dramatically, making it really difficult to tell people what will happen. You see, in the air, small things matter. There can be a difference between a lovely sunny day or a grey cloudy day like this, or a gale which will leave you running for that beachside cafe for a hot chocolate while you watch the waves crashing in to the shore. Small things can make a difference too, to the earth being a home for a vibrant community of life, or a place where life might never have taken hold. The Earth's atmosphere is made up of a community of different gases. Mostly nitrogen, which bulks it out, protecting it from rocks from space and enabling the plants to thrive. And then there's oxygen, which we and other animals depend on. But only less than 1 part in 100, less than 1%, is water vapor. And there's even less carbon dioxide, methane, and the other gases measured in parts per million. But these greenhouse gases are responsible for maintaining the climate of the Earth. Water vapor, carbon dioxide, and the other greenhouse gases in their smallness trap energy from the sun. They warm our planet by 30 degrees centigrade, turning it from what would have been a frozen snowball with ice from the poles to the equator to a home for a vast community of life beyond measure, of which we play our part. Not that we always play by the rules, not that we always play fair. Small though a butterfly's wing is, it might have a huge impact on the world. And small though we seem compared to the vastness of the sky, we too are having an impact. Fossil fuel burning, releasing carbon stored through millions of years in a couple of hundred, leads to the warming of the planet as carbon dioxide builds in the atmosphere. 1 degree so far. How much more? 2, 3, 4 degrees? Well, that's down to us. And as it warms, the playfulness of the weather gets wilder, affecting those who are responsible for adding most of the additional greenhouse gases to our air, but more still those who in their smallness have contributed little, yet who know the impact of the rough play of the weather on already fragile lives. And not only people, but the lives of the whole community of creation, which we share this amazing, wondrous and playful and yet fragile world with. So, look up at the vastness of it all, vastness that can make us feel so small, but with the creative potential to understand the play of the air, a game we can perceive the rules of, a game in which we play our part, changing the climate now and for future generations of people and all of life around the world. And yet a game that we cannot control or fully know the ending. For all the insights that science gives, or because of them, perhaps they should call us back to humility before the powerful, awe-inspiring playfulness of the sky. I think with Messy Adventures and Messy Church Go Wild, we want to encourage people to look up. We want them to look out and around. And it's a way of helping people to have hope in the face of something that can seem very, very overwhelming. Because one of the tendencies that I've discovered talking to young adults in the UK when I ask them about climate change, are you talking about it? They say it seems so overwhelming, we just want to ignore it. So we want to enable people to engage with this, but I think there's value in giving people hope by engaging them with the beauty of creation and saying to them, the little things that you do in your own individual lives to make a difference to the future, they matter. They matter because, you know, as Jesus says, small things grow into big things. And, you know, some of your families, in the small things they start out with, might have a huge impact on the world in the future. So this is the website for all the, where you can download as PDFs the individual sessions and the videos with all the activities. But we only got about 20 minutes before tea break, and I'm not going to steal any of your time, Greg. So I thought we might do a few activities together, and we've got quite a few activities here. We probably don't have a lot of time to use them all, and we haven't got much space outside, so I'm going to suggest we mainly stay inside here. But a couple of things I'd love you to do. On this table here, there's activities to look at the smallness of the world, and there are 9 phone microscopes. So you attach these to your camera of your phone, and you can go and look at the smallness of the world in detail. So we've got some leaves here. There's some beautiful leaves here. You might want to look at those that Helen brought with her today. Or actually, you just might want to look at your fingerprint. So you could use those. I've got some rainbow makers here. I'd really love you to make rainbow makers on this table, the third table over here. You had that template in your bag, and all you have to do is cut out the little blue square and stick a piece of plastic over one side of it, glue them together. That will make a rainbow maker for you. We'll use that in our final celebration. And then if you could make a rocket, we'll launch some rockets. Now, to make a rocket, it's really easy. All we need is a tube and a piece of paper. Get a piece of paper. Here we go. I'll just use this. So you need a tube, and if I can get the piece of paper, tube and a piece of paper, and it's really easy. You can roll your piece of paper around the tube like that, and you just stick it down with a bit of sticky tape. And then don't have it too tight on the tube. Make sure the tube will move through it like that. Take the tube out, bend over one end, stick it down. So you've got open at one end, close at the other. That's a rocket. And on the rocket, I'd like you to invite you to write a prayer. It could be a prayer for the earth. It could be a prayer asking for forgiveness, repentance. It could be lament, expressing your sorrow over the way the world's changing, or you could be thankfulness for something beautiful you see in creation. And then as part of our just a little moment of celebration and worship at the end, I'm going to clear this table here. I'm going to build a jigsaw for you of the earth. If you want to help me do a jigsaw, that's great. I'm not very good at jigsaws. And then we're going to launch our rockets and our prayers over the earth as a sign we care for the earth. And you could have a look at some of the activities over coffee break as well. Okay. So, rockets, microscopes, rainbow makers, if we could focus on them, if a couple of you want me to help make a jigsaw, that'd be great. So, off you go.